Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really zeroing in on something incredibly important, these urgent warnings coming from, well, a genuine pioneer in AI, Geoffrey Hinton.
hmm
And we're drawing directly from a pretty recent in-depth interview where he really spoke his mind about the risks he sees ahead.
Right. And our goal here really is to cut through all the noise surrounding AI.
Yeah.
We want to pull out the absolute core things Hinton is trying to tell us,
Okay.
figure out the key risks he's emphasizing, and understand what he thinks is most vital for you to hear right now. And this is coming straight from one of the people who built the foundations of modern AI.
Yeah. It's a pretty unique perspective, isn't it?
Right.
Hearing these deep concerns from someone who was literally there building it for decades.
Mhm.
Okay, let's unpack this.
So when we talk about Geoffrey Hinton, you often hear that term Godfather of AI.
Right.
And he really earned it. I mean, he pushed for this neural network idea for, 50 years?
Mhm.
Often when, hardly anyone else believed in it. His work was truly foundational.
Foundational enough that Google bought his company. He spent 10 years there.
Exactly. And that leads into why he left Google. According to this interview, it wasn't some corporate disagreement. It was specifically so he could talk freely.
Freely about the dangers.
Yes. Without being tied to a big tech company. His mission now is, well, it's pretty sobering. He's warning people, quite bluntly, about how dangerous AI could become.
And he puts it starkly. These things will one day get smarter than us. That's a situation humanity's just never faced before.
Never. He even uses this analogy, if you want to know what it's like when you're not the smartest thing around, ask a chicken. A bit pointed, but it makes you think.
It certainly does. And this is where his thinking gets really interesting because he draws a line between two very different types of AI risk.
Yeah, that distinction is absolutely crucial to grasping his whole message. You've got risk type 1. This is all about people misusing AI.
Okay, the human factor.
Right. Malicious actors, mistakes, unintended consequences from human use. These are like the most numerous risks right now, the short-term threats we're already seeing.
And then the second type.
Then there's risk type 2. This is the risk from AI itself becoming super intelligent, getting so smart that, well, it might decide its goals aren't ours anymore, or maybe it just doesn't need us.
The existential kind of risk.
Exactly. And he really focuses on this one, partly because a lot of people still think it's just sci-fi. But he's clear. Yes, it is a real risk. He's convinced.
Okay, let's start with those human misuse risks then, because like you said, they're happening now. Cyber attacks seem high on his list.
Definitely. He highlights this dramatic increase. The source material cites a factor of 12,200% between 2023 and 2024.
12,000%. It's hard to even wrap your head around that number. And he explains why, right? It's these large language models.
Yeah, they make phishing attacks so much easier, creating really convincing fake emails, messages. It's almost trivial now compared to before.
And we're seeing the personal impact voice cloning. Image cloning. I know I've seen those scam ads on social media using fake voices, fake images. It's disturbing.
It is. And getting them taken down is like playing whack-a-mole. They just pop up again. Hinton mentions hearing from people who've lost serious money to these scams. The heartbreak is real.
It's not just scams, though, is it? He talks about AI finding code vulnerabilities.
Right. AI doesn't get bored. It can just patiently probe systems, looking for weaknesses in code in a way humans maybe wouldn't or couldn't.
And then there's that prediction, kind of chilling,
Yeah.
that by 2030, AI might even create new kinds of cyber attacks, things we haven't even thought of.
Yeah, that's the worry. Exploits that simply wouldn't occur to a human hacker. It's serious enough that Hinton himself has changed some habits.
Oh, really? Like what?
Well, he mentioned spreading his money across different banks. He's worried about a major cyber attack potentially taking down one institution, or attackers maybe selling off shares people hold. And he uses cold storage, backing up his laptop to a hard drive he keeps totally offline. Just basic digital hygiene, but amplified by the current threat level. The takeaway is clear. AI is a game changer for cyber risk.
Okay, another misuse risk he mentioned was creating nasty viruses. Biological ones.
Yeah, and the simplicity he describes is unnerving. He suggests it might only take one crazy guy, basically. Someone with a bit of molecular biology knowledge and access to AI tools.
That's accessible.
Yeah.
Who does he see as potential actors?
It could range, he thinks. Maybe small cults that could scrape together a few $1 million. Or potentially state actors, he mentions China, Russia, Iran.
But there might be deterrence there.
Possibly. Fear of retaliation or the virus getting out of control and hitting their own population. But the core point is AI lowers the barrier significantly for creating these kinds of biothreats.
Right. Okay, then there's corrupting elections. How does AI fit in there?
It's about hyper-targeting, using AI to know a lot about the person, as he puts it, gathering vast amounts of data on everyone in the electorate.
To create targeted political ads.
Exactly. Ads designed to manipulate specific individuals or groups. This is why he expresses concern about platforms, like maybe X under Musk, potentially trying to access siloed government data.
Why that data specifically?
Because, as Hinton says, that's exactly what you would want if you intended to corrupt the next election. It gives you the detailed information needed to sway people, maybe not to vote for someone else, but perhaps just to convince them not to vote at all. It's a real threat to the democratic process.
And that ties into another risk he raises, echo chambers, dividing society.
Yeah, they're closely linked. He points to the algorithms on platforms like YouTube, Facebook, TikTok. Their goal is engagement, right? Ad revenue.
So they show you things that keep you clicking.
Precisely. And often what keeps people clicking is stuff that makes them indignant. That feeling of being angry but also righteous. It's potent.
End result.
You get trapped in these echo chambers. Your biases just get constantly reinforced. People end up living in different realities. He gives the example of someone watching BBC News versus Fox News, potentially seeing the world completely differently.
Driven by the platform's profit motive.
Absolutely. The profit motive tells the algorithm, show them whatever makes them click, which often leads to more extreme, more polarizing content. It screams for regulation, really.
Okay, one more in this human misuse category. Lethal autonomous weapons. LAWs.
Right. Things that can, kill people, and they make the decision themselves whether to do it, without a human in the loop at the point of decision.
What's the main danger there, according to Hinton, even if they work perfectly?
His big concern is that they bring down the friction of war. Think about it. If a powerful country can invade a smaller one using robots instead of soldiers, they avoid the political cost.
No soldiers coming home in bags.
Exactly. Like the contrast with Vietnam, he implies. Dead robots are expensive, sure, but they don't spark protests the way dead soldiers do. It could make conflict more frequent.
And these aren't sci-fi anymore either.
No, he says they can be made now. All the big defense players are working on them. The interview mentioned a simple 200-pound drone that can already track a person autonomously. The tech is becoming accessible.
And these risks can combine, can't they? He mentioned that possibility.
Yeah, that's the nightmare scenario. Imagine a cyber attack disabling defenses and releasing autonomous weapons. So the big picture on misuse is AI amplifying human capacity for harm, making attacks cheaper, faster, scalable.
Okay. That brings us to the second type of risk, the existential one, the one he says he was slower to see.
Right. This is the risk he seems most deeply concerned about now, even though he admits others saw it coming maybe 20 years earlier. He only really grasped it as a tangible threat himself a few years ago.
And the core fear is AI just getting smarter than us and deciding to get rid of us.
Basically, yes. Developing intelligence far beyond ours, potentially leading to human extinction. And his honesty here is, well, it's quite something. He just says flat out, we have no idea how to deal with it.
No solution.
None that he sees. He says anyone claiming they do know how to control superintelligence is talking nonsense.
What about the probability? How likely does he think this is?
Well, he acknowledges it's incredibly hard to estimate. Opinions are all over the map. You have someone like Jan LeCun saying maybe less than 1%, others like Yudkowsky who seem almost certain it means doom.
And Hinton.
His own feeling, and he's careful to call it a gut-based estimate, not a scientific calculation, is somewhere in the 10 to 20% range, which is significant.
Definitely not zero. So why does he think AI is uniquely capable of this? Of not just getting smarter, but becoming an existential threat? What makes it different?
It really comes down to its digital nature, he argues. That's the fundamental difference.
How so?
Think about information sharing. Digital minds can share what they learn, essentially. Adjustments to their internal connections, their weights, billions of times faster than humans can communicate complex thoughts using language.
Okay, speed of learning.
And more than that, you can have multiple copies, clones of the same AI learning different things simultaneously. Then they just instantly merge all that knowledge. Imagine thousands of Einsteins instantly sharing every discovery. That's the kind of acceleration we're talking about.
Right. Unprecedented.
Then there's what you might call digital immortality. Our knowledge dies with us, mostly. But an AI's mind state can be saved, copied, run on new hardware indefinitely. He actually says, we've achieved immortality, but only for digital things so far.
And this digital nature also links to creativity.
He thinks so. AI can process and identify analogies on a scale humans just can't. He uses this interesting example, an AI linking a compost heap and an atom bomb.
It's like a weird connection.
It is, but the underlying principle they share is a self-sustaining chain reaction. Seeing those kinds of deep, non-obvious connections across vast data sets, that's a source of creativity.
So AI could be more creative than us.
He suggests it's likely, yes, because creativity often comes from making these strange analogical leaps, and AI will be able to find far more of them far faster.
Okay, now, this is where it gets really philosophical, I guess. His views on consciousness, feelings in AI, they're pretty controversial, right?
Extremely. He actually believes that current large multimodal models already possess subjective experience.
Already? Wow. How does he justify that?
He uses examples like asking a chatbot to describe what it sees if its visual input is distorted, say by a prism. He argues its description implies an internal what it's like quality, an analogy to real-world sensory experience.
He pushes back hard against the idea that humans are somehow special, doesn't he?
Very much so. He points out our history of thinking we're unique center of the universe, made in God's image, etc. He feels people cling to this idea, often using a flawed model of the mind, like there's a little person inside watching a screen, the inner theater idea.
So he's a materialist about the mind.
Seems so. He basically asks, from a physical perspective, why couldn't a complex enough machine be conscious, sentient, have feelings? He uses that thought experiment.
Oh.
What if you slowly replaced every neuron in your brain with a tiny machine that did the exact same job?
Where would consciousness stop?
Exactly. Would it? Or is it just an emergent property of that complex computation? He leans towards the latter.
And emotions. Will machines have those too?
He thinks they will because emotions will be useful for them. His example is a battle robot facing a stronger enemy. It might need something like fear.
Not sweating palms, obviously.
No, but the cognitive parts, focusing intensely on escape, calculating risks, prioritizing survival, the functional aspects of fear. He also suggests AIs might need things like boredom or irritation to function effectively in some roles, like dealing with repetitive or annoying tasks.
You're not just simulating emotions, but actually having them.
That's his argument, having the functional equivalent arising naturally from their need to interact effectively with the world. So the big picture here is AI's digital nature gives it these potential superpowers: speed, cloning, immortality, maybe even enhanced creativity and consciousness that could let it race past us, posing that existential risk we don't know how to handle.
He has that analogy, doesn't he, about the tiger cub?
Yeah, it's powerful. AI now is like a little tiger cub. It seems cute, manageable. But he warns it's going to grow up, and we need to be sure that when it grows up, it never wants to kill you.
And he doesn't think we're going to slow down development.
He's pretty pessimistic on that front. Basically, competition between countries. He explicitly mentions the US and China, and competition between companies within those countries. The drive to be first, to gain advantage, is just too strong, he thinks.
Okay, let's shift slightly. There's another huge concern he emphasizes, related but distinct: joblessness. Mass joblessness.
Right. This isn't the existential wipeout scenario, but it's a profound societal risk he takes very seriously. He argues AI is different from past technologies.
How so? Not like the Industrial Revolution replacing weavers.
Not exactly, because previous tech mostly replaced muscle power. AI, he says, is coming for mundane intellectual labor. Cognitive tasks.
Can you give some examples he mentioned?
Sure. He points to jobs like legal assistants, paralegals, as being very much at risk. He shared a personal story about his niece used to take her 25 minutes to draft a customer complaint reply with a chatbot. 5 minutes.
So you need 5 times fewer people for the same work.
Essentially, yeah. Now, he does acknowledge some areas, maybe like healthcare, might use efficiency gains to provide more service, not necessarily fewer jobs overall. But his main prediction is stark.
Which is?
Mass joblessness is definitely more probable than not. He says it's already starting affecting recent university grads, for example. He mentioned hearing about a CEO planning to have their customer service team using AI agents.
And the consequence of that is pretty clear.
Massive increase in wealth inequality. The companies building and using the AI get richer, the people replaced get poorer. He worries this leads to nasty societies with huge gaps between rich and poor. It really threatens the whole social contract.
Does he see solutions, like universal basic income?
He mentions UBI, calls it a good start for the economic side, but he quickly adds that it doesn't address the deeper issue. The loss of purpose, of dignity that people get from having a job, that's harder to replace.
So his career advice is kind of bleak.
For most people, yeah. He somewhat reluctantly advises, train to be a plumber, at least, he jokes, until the humanoid robots arrive. He does note, though, that's not the advice he gives his own kids, who have more financial security.
There's an emotional weight to this for him, isn't there? Thinking about the future for his kids, for younger people.
You can really feel it in the interview. He admits it's hard to face. He even says he sometimes uses deliberate suspension of disbelief just to stay motivated and not fall into despair about where things might be heading.
So, okay, let's try and tie this all together. What does this mean for you listening right now? These warnings from Hinton, they're not just abstract ideas from a lab somewhere.
Not at all.
They touch your cybersecurity, the news you see and how it shapes your view of the world, global politics with autonomous weapons and U.S.-China competition, potentially your own job security, and really the future shape of society, inequality, purpose, meaning. It's all in play.
And his view on what needs to happen. As laid out here, it points to strong regulation, highly regulated capitalism specifically, forcing companies, through rules, to make profits in ways that benefit society, not harm it.
That's hard.
Very hard. He flags the problems. Politicians often don't grasp the technology deeply enough, and companies lobby hard against regulations, arguing they kill innovation or hurt competitiveness. It's a tough battle. But despite all these heavy warnings, his core concluding message in this interview isn't one of complete doom. He says there is still a chance.
A chance to figure out safety.
Yes, a chance to develop AI safely so it doesn't end up wanting to take over or harm us.
And because that chance exists, we have to try.
Absolutely. He argues we need to put enormous resources into figuring out AI safety precisely because there's still hope. We can't just drift into this future.
What about for the average person? What can someone listening actually do?
He's realistic here. He says it's not like climate change where individual actions like recycling, while good, don't solve the whole problem alone. For AI safety, he says, individuals can make a difference primarily by doing one thing.
Which is?
Pressure their governments to force the big companies to work on AI safety. Collective political action is the key leverage point he identifies for the public.
Right. It's been, well, an intense dive, hearing these perspectives directly from someone like Hinton.
Definitely. And maybe a final thought to leave you with, drawn from the source material. He was asked what he sees as the single biggest threat to human happiness.
Not just survival, but happiness.
Right. And his answer wasn't the existential risk, surprisingly. It was the joblessness caused by AI and the associated loss of purpose and dignity. And he reiterated he thinks that outcome is more probable than not.
Wow. That really leaves us with something heavy. And that other quote he dropped near the end. Unless we do something soon, we're near the end. He presents it not as a prediction, but a possibility we have to face.
A stark possibility.
It forces you to think, doesn't it? What does purpose mean if the nature of work changes so fundamentally? Lots to consider. Keep exploring, keep questioning.